So, we could start with Donald Trump basically having one of the most bizarre televised things I've ever seen in English. I mean, I'm sure I've watched it probably in other languages and didn't know what was going on. But before we do, actually, let's do this, just because I wanted to play this up front. I used to be about 25 years ago, plus, almost a psychotic fan of Charlie Rose's program. I wasn't always a big fan of him as much as the show. It got a little more Hollywood in the early 90s. But prior to that, it was one of the few places you could sit down and you could actually watch like a 45 or a half an hour interview with policymakers and whatnot. And as it got older, as he did, he wanted a little bit more exposure to Hollywood and apparently actresses, as far as I can tell. And then by like the teens, he was just grasping around for anybody who could get on the show. And
Literally.
So here is July. Yes, indeed. Here is on July 21st, 2017, Charlie Rose interviewed a guy who was trying to run for the DNC chair.
Complete nobody.
He was trying to run for the DNC chair. And here he is. This is one of those things that reeks of like, I've hired a publicist and they're going to get me on a show and they've got a good pitch. He ran for DNC chair and this is one of those. And so I give you Charlie Rose and Pete Buttigieg from July 21st, 2017.
In terms of national politics, did you support Bernie Sanders or did you support Hillary Clinton?
I supported Hillary Clinton. I worked very hard to do what I could to get her elected in the general election against Donald Trump. I also, when I was a high school student, noticed Bernie Sanders. Actually, at the time, I was looking for a subject to write an essay for the Profiles in Courage essay contest, and he was kind of I won with this essay that I wrote about then Congressman
Pause it
Sanders.
for 1 second. Let me just say at this point, like, I felt like that I was nerdy in high school.
Oh
I don't feel that so much
That
anymore.
hand-raising little freak.
Yeah. Just go back just a little bit, and then we'll go into this.
Courage essay contest, and he was kind of I won with this essay that I wrote about then Congressman Sanders.
won.
I've always admired him as well.
Because he was a socialist or because
he said what he meant, he meant what he said, and
a democratic socialist.
While being very clear in his political values, he was actually pretty successful in working with people across the aisle. And I think that's a message that certainly has played out in my lifetime, whether you look at Paul Wellstone, who votes against the Iraq War on the eve of his reelection in a state where the war is popular. He takes an unpopular stand and somehow his approval goes up. And frankly, I think the same was true of George W. Bush as well, who had a line that he used to say, I remember this from working on the Kerry campaign, George W. Bush used to say with devastating effect, you always know where I stand. And he said it in a way that suggested you couldn't say the same of his opponent. And even people who might not have agreed with him were inclined to support somebody who they thought was guided by conviction.
For the Democrats.
So basically what he's saying there is strong and wrong. It trumps anything else. Like, and by wrong, just meaning like you may disagree with them, but they're so strong in their opinion that is what's going to attract him. And I think it's very brave of Buttigieg to admit that about the guy who's going to beat him in this primary.
He didn't even answer the question either. Like, the question was, who would you support in the 2016 primary, right?
Oh, he said Hillary Clinton.
And his answer was, I worked very hard to make sure Hillary Clinton won the general.
In the general.
Oh, right.
And then I wrote an essay about Bernie in high school.
Right, there you go.
Yeah, I won,
Which
by
one?
the way. By the way.
Which one?
I mean, I'll let you say it won.
It won. It won.
Like, if you care, if you even talk about your essays from high school after high school, you're a loser.
I find that just stunning.
I wrote a hit play. What did you ever do?
Here is Buttigieg after Iowa. Now, to be fair, this was almost 2.5 years ago. And when you look at the
Very different political environment.
When you look at the turn that Buttigieg made just from February of last year, 12 months, like, I'm surprised that it's almost not, that it's only this undramatic.
For the Democratic voter who hasn't paid attention until now, What's the difference between you and Senator Sanders?
Well, the difference is that I have an approach that can build a sense of unity that we're going to need, not only in order to win, but in order to govern. We have an extraordinary majority of Democrats, yes, but quite a few independents and a healthy number of Republicans ready to get that done. Why would now, of all times, we go for a my way or the highway politics?
I mean, now 2 years ago, he had this sense that Bernie really reached across the aisle in a way that's like actually surprising.
Yes.
And now apparently it's all my way, the highway.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, as we all know, Bernie's fundamental philosophy has shifted a lot as well in the past 2 years. So I can see why.
Exactly. That's the one thing about Sanders.
Whichever way the wind blows.
Where you never know where he stands. It's interesting that Buttigieg is taking this tack. I didn't want to talk about this now, and we'll circle back to it. To where we're going forward in terms of the 2020 election. I also want to touch on impeachment a little bit, and we'll go through some of what Trump had to do the other day. But this notion of unity, one of my complaints with the Warren campaign, and I think people know that I have. I certainly have been supportive of Warren in the past. I mean, in the context of this primary, my first choice is Bernie, but Warren, in terms of her competence and her politics, is definitely an easy second choice for me. It's not even, I don't even have to think twice about it. I felt her campaign has been really not good.
It has poorly served her.
It has poorly served her. And it has poorly served her. I mean, so much so that it has inhibited my support for her. And I'm not ingesting this like a regular consumer, right? Like I'm ingesting this as like, as a critic.
Yeah.
And the campaign has been so bad that I think it has reflected poorly on her as a political leader. And this whole unity thing that they're pushing, and frankly, I'm happy to see Buttigieg do it too. This is a message to insiders.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's not like 80% minimum of anybody who's going to pull a lever or whatever they do in New Hampshire, or, and God knows whatever they did in Iowa. They're not going in saying like, this is a really fractured party.
No.
They don't have this notion of bringing people together. I mean, these are people like, I support Biden and I support Sanders, or they don't have this sense that the insiders have.
That things are like threatening to break apart, right?
Yes.
Or like, I think like, I'm pretty sure there's polling that broadly the Democratic electorate is like, oh, we like all these people.
Exactly. In fact, I think if there was a lack of turnout in Iowa, it was just because like I really can't decide. Just give me a candidate, and I'm
excited to go vote for it.
But this also cuts against the other main message, which is Democrats understand. I mean, even frickin' Joe Walsh was saying this today. Democrats understand, like, we need to get this guy out of the office, and we're all going to be there. And then at the same time, you're saying, and I am appealing because I'm a unity candidate. Unity for whom? Like, nobody has, it's based on a premise that I think they are so myopic. And it goes along with my sense that, they knew that she would be the compromise candidate. And instead of letting her be herself, they ran her as a compromised candidate.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it all fits in, like the unity thing too. It's like, wait, what?
Right.
The unity thing is obviously disingenuous. It's like, unity for who? It goes back to the whole bend the knee argument from 2016. It's unity for me and not for thee.
No, it's not disingenuous because it doesn't exist. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's just a made up thing. The bend the knee thing means something to everybody in this room. But as soon as you step outside and talk to they have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, we are talking about the internal machinations of the Democratic Party, though.
Well, I understand, but this is their pitch to all the voters who have no idea what she's talking about.
Yeah.
They don't,
Fair
they're,
enough.
you know, like the idea of unity. Oh, well, she must be referencing when Chapo went on Twitter and said, you got to bend the knee. Oh, of course.
Right, there's
well,
like-
that's a good point. I mean, I really want to make sure that, we appeal to both like Katie Halper and Neera Tanden. And so I'm going to go pull the lever for
there's
Warren.
like school teachers in New Hampshire are like, well.
There's no Democrats out there who are thinking like, what we need is unity in the party. What?
Yeah.
It's just in a bizarre and no one.
It's entirely elite conversation.
It's an entirely elite conversation, and everybody on cable television says the same damn thing.
To be fair, though, like there is a fairly elite portion of the base of the Democratic Party. It's not the whole base, but it is. I would say it has an inordinate amount of influence.
An elite base? What do you mean?
Yeah, like I mean, it goes back to all our conversations about the professional class, which forms the base for.
I didn't have any of those conversations.
For
I mean, I think
Warren.
like yes, Warren's support is one demographic, and Sanders may be another, and Buttigieg and Biden may share across that. But the idea that someone needs to bring everybody together, it's just bizarre. Like, I mean, Obama and Clinton. That was a much more vicious primary.
Yeah, absolutely.
And nobody...
And much more vicious in public. Like, that's the thing is like, this is a...
Between them
personally.
Yeah.
Because this is a meta discussion about, I think what you were saying is the unity stuff is a meta discussion about what's happening on Twitter, essentially. And
Which is not to say that there isn't some influence there in terms of the way people write.
In terms of the way people write about it and the way they talk about it. But on the campaign trail, on the stump, Sanders is not going after Warren, and Warren. I mean, it's not happening.
No, and frankly, like we haven't even seen that much between Biden and Trump.
Yeah.
You know, like this is like, how could you have a primary without it?
Like we saw Harris try to go after Biden and then like get kind of freaked out and stop.
Right. And it wasn't even what she was going after him. Like, this is not stuff that like the normal voter goes like, this is tearing at the fabric of the Democratic Party. People are not going to come out and vote. It is silliness.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that the arguments that are happening at, in the more narrow circles of the Democratic Party because they want to, control the party and they want to push it where it goes ideologically. But I'm saying that as a pitch for voters, I think it's confusing.
Yeah.
And I mean, she should be up there. It's talking about like who she is,
there's kind of
what she's doing, and
there's a lot of this. I think even outside the election, a lot of this stuff happens where the broader public has this idea where it's like, for the broader electorate or the broader public, they will see AOC and be like, "Oh, I like her. Everyone likes her. She's like the rising Democratic star." And then like the sort of conversation in the party is like she must get in line,
right?
And people are like, "Is she not? Is she not in line? I didn't know.
I had no idea that she wasn't in line. Well, in line with for what? Yeah. Like, I mean, that's what I think is just fascinating. So I'm happy if Pete Buttigieg is out there talking about unity, because then I think it's just sort of like, I think it muddles. Well, I don't know that he has much of a message other than like, I'm young and I'm like the candidate.
Won an essay contest. I'm young.
I am an open enough of a screen that you can project upon me what you want, but I'm clearly younger than the old people that you have the other option for. And so, interesting. But